Congresswoman Ilhan Omar being accused of making new anti-Semitic remarks. Omar facing Republican backlash, and there's some feuding with members of her own party after she said this.
When I talk about the political influence in this country that says it is okay for people to push for allegiance to a foreign country.
Woo!
I want to ask, why is it okay for me to talk about the influence of the NRA or fossil fuel industries or big pharma and not talk about a powerful lobbying group that is influencing policy?
In response to those remarks, Democrats could vote tomorrow on a resolution to condemn anti-Semitism. The party, however, is split over whether to include Omar's name in the resolution. So, Dana, let's just go to the heart of the matter, because there are people who are saying she's talking about American policy in the Middle East. Why is that anti-Semitic?
Well, it's because there's a code, right? So she also talks about dual loyalty. That's what she's suggesting, is that people who support is the state of Israel, that if you're Jewish, that you actually, your loyalty is not just to the United States, your loyalty is to Israel. And it's been something that has been considered anti-Semitic and goes way back. And so perhaps she didn't know initially that when she said that that was offensive. But the thing is, now she's been told so many times that you have to wonder, like, how do you solve, even like from the musical, how do you solve a problem like Maria? I think that's what the Democrats, like, how do you solve this problem of Congresswoman Omar? Because this is a story that keeps coming back over and over again, to the extent that Mark Mellman, who's a Democratic pollster kind of guy, a consultant, they've started a group, Democrats for Israel, right? Like, to like explain to people why, if you're Jewish and you're a Democrat, you should be supportive. And they had to do like a whole re-education, that's probably the wrong word, but education to people who are younger, somebody like Congresswoman Omar, who is younger. But this is not, she's not an isolated case, right? This is being taught across universities, and in particular the BDS movement, to try to divest from anything that has to do with Jewish people or Israel. That it's growing, and so I think that there does need to be a decision by the Democrats, and I think they would be smart to go ahead and take it on now, because it's clearly not going to get better.
Well, Jesse, in fact, a lot of people argue that this is not about Jewish people, that the biggest supporters of Israel are evangelical Christians and the Republican Party on the right that have made Israel into sort of a litmus test for themselves. What do you think?
Well, I mean, this is universal condemnation to Omar. I mean, Nancy Pelosi, the Anti-Defamation League, the Jewish Policy Center, have all said that what she said is offensive and prejudiced. It's not something that the evangelical right is creating here as a wedge issue. She reminds me of, a freshman in college, like 2 weeks into the semester, first term, she's already on probation. She's already had her parents called. This is not good. I mean, she's barely a freshman, and she's already getting spanked by the leadership. It's humiliating to her, and it's got to be humiliating to the Democratic leadership right now. If you combine her with AOC's Green New Deal, and then she stepped in it with this, felony campaign finance scandal, and then the other Tlaib woman, the MRF impeachment rhetoric that came out of her mouth, these three radical musketeers are causing a big problem for the Democratic Party. Yeah. And I guarantee you there's some picture of her with Farrakhan or someone that's about to drop. If you look at, we talked about this the other day, she wrote that letter of support to ISIS recruits. She's trafficked in anti-Semitic tropes. She's used kind of money language about Jewish people and their influence. She has been educated. The Jewish community in her district in Minnesota had a big summit with her. They called it an anti-Semitic intervention. And they told her, you can't say this. This is the history of the Jewish people. And she still doesn't get it.
Well, so, I mean, in fact, the West Virginia GOP put up a poster, linked her to 9/11, totally illegitimate. But again, these are attacks against her. And so, Greg, the question becomes, should she be stripped of her seat on the Foreign Affairs Committee?
I don't think she should have ever gotten the seat to begin with. I have a hard time with language being overparsed, and because that's that's what we are doing these days on both sides, and I think the left is harder on the right in this case. I mean, they come after and they try to believe what you said means something else. She can say what she wants; she just has to live with it. What bugs me about her is there's this other hypocrisy that she gets away with. The lesbian, gay, bisexual, the LGBTQ. Am I missing one?
No, Q is the end of it.
Q is the end, who kind of are okay with what's not being said. So the most friendly country in the Middle East for gays is Israel, right? And that's the country she keeps harping on. And I don't think that's a coincidence, because what are the other countries that, it is definitely linked to her religious background. Yeah. But that somehow skates by. As everybody makes fun of Mike Pence, her religion makes Mike Pence look like Freddie Mercury. So let's I think that's something, that is kind of like not discussed, that probably could be raised. Like, what are her thoughts? I know that she comes out in defense of the community here, but what about her affiliations to
Dems forced to issue formal resolution to rebuke anti-Semite Ilhan Omar. In a stunning about-face, Democrats have caved to intense pressure from Jewish organizations and will introduce a resolution which leadership claims will confront the anti-Semitism that has erupted in the party since they took control of the House in November. Speaker Nancy Pelosi and the media have teamed up to tout the diverse new freshman class of women who were elected as the party's new face, but in reality, that diversity has allowed for vile Jew haters like Minnesota Representative Ilhan Omar and her foul-mouthed cohort Rashida to become prominent voices. In Omar's case, that voice refuses to be silenced when it comes to bashing Jews and promoting anti-Semitic tropes, and following her latest outburst, she came under intense fire from not only top Jewish Democrat Eliot Engel but also organizations led by the Anti-Defamation League, ADL, which made it clear that Pelosi isn't going allowed to let her renegade newbie off with just a slap on the wrist with a limp noodle this time. Following the ADL's outcry, there will be a formal resolution introduced on Wednesday to chastise the Somali-born radical, although it will likely fall far short of removing her from her position on the influential House Foreign Affairs Committee. Via the Hill, House Dems to vote on resolution in response to Omar's latest Israel remarks. Staffed from the offices of Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Democrat California Majority Leader Steny Hoyer, DMD, Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman Eliot Engel, DNY, and Representative Ted Deutsch, Democrat Florida, worked on the resolution over the weekend. The senior Democratic aide said the resolution, which was first reported by Politico, was being drafted before the Anti-Defamation League sent a letter on Monday urging Democratic leaders to consider a resolution condemning Omar's remarks. The aide cautioned that the formal text of the resolution has not yet been finalized. It won't be the first time the House has voted in recent weeks to condemn anti-Semitism in response to comments made by Omar about Israel. Omar last month apologized after suggesting that U.S. lawmakers defending Israel were motivated by money, writing on Twitter that it's all about the Benjamin's baby. Omar's latest remarks at the bookstore event last week came while arguing that critics calling her anti-Semitic were trying to silence debate in bad faith. I want to talk about the political influence in this country that says it is okay for people to push for allegiance to a foreign country, Omar said. Omar doubled down on her comments over the weekend, despite criticism from Engel and House Appropriations Committee Chairwoman Nita Lowey, DNY, both of whom are Jewish. I should not be expected to have allegiance, pledge support to a foreign country in order to serve my country in Congress or serve on committee, Omar tweeted. At some point, you would have to think that Nancy Pelosi would decide that Omar is more trouble than she is worth, but as the latest cover of Rolling Stone magazine can attest, it's not going to be easy to mitigate the damage that has already been done. Meanwhile, the calls are mounting for Omar to be booted off the committee that she had no business being on in the first place with due to lack of experience and her biased, bigoted history. Pelosi has done a fine job painting herself into a corner.
And it's ridiculous. Frankly, I question the motives of those who don't support Israel.
Ellison Barber at the White House. Ellison, thank you.
So could yesterday perhaps be a preview to the general election of 2020? President Trump and Bernie Sanders both rallying their supporters Saturday afternoon, with the Vermont senator holding his first 2020 campaign event as the president spoke at CPAC. You can see it on the split screen. Sanders went back to his roots while telling voters why he thinks he's the best person to take on the president.
My mother's dream was that someday our family would move out of that rent-controlled apartment. She died young while we still lived in that rent-controlled apartment. I know where I came from. And that is something I will never forget.
And with that, we bring in our talk radio panel. Robert Patillo on the left, Larry O'Connor aptly on the right. Gentlemen, good to see you. Robert, start with this. Sanders is in good company, because it seems as though when you listen to all of these announcement speeches by Democrats, it is a recitation of how terrible and tragic their youth was and how difficult it was. Is that a selling point?
Well, I think what they want to do is be able to connect with people who are actually struggling and working today in their lives. They want people to understand that I feel your pain. We know that famous Bill Clinton, I feel your pain moment, and understand that I'm not just simply, Bernie Sanders is a multimillionaire now who owns $3 million mansions. He wants people to understand that at some point in life, he was actually able to connect with them, and he wants to institute policies that will help them be able to pull out of those situations.
Larry, though, the policies that a number of Democrats seem to be offering isn't about allowing for economic achievement. It's about seeming to give away free stuff.
That's right. And of course, it's not free. And most of the people that they're talking to are going to be the ones who are paying for it. The voters that they need are the middle class and the upper middle class. That's where President Trump actually won the election. And you know what's interesting? Looking at President Trump's speech at CPAC that you referred to, he's ready for Bernie. He wants Bernie. So much of his speech was about socialism, about pushing back against these socialist ideas and connected it to, well, the successful socialism we've seen in Venezuela.
I guess the question, Robert, is why do you not hear more of an aspirational message from Democrats? It's not an American exceptionalism message. It's a, hey, America's going to give you all this free stuff because you've had it so rough and each intersectional group has been discriminated against.
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest part of it is an understanding of where the base is right now. That in the early primary states, the people who are the activists, the people who are getting out early mornings to knock on doors in Iowa, those people have to be motivated and energized, and those are people who feel like they've been left behind by America. So while you have, in the green room, we're talking, there are 3 separate billionaires sending spaceships into outer space right now. When you have that kind of wealth and income inequality in a country where certain people own rocket ships and other people can't pay their light bill or can't feed their children, well, you have to put in policies that will help to bring those people up.
But what's interesting is those billionaires all support Democrats, and President Trump, even though he's a billionaire, he actually appeals to.
Doesn't.
But he appeals to those guys. He appeals to the middle class, blue collar voters.
That's certainly how he won the election.
That's right, and he sends them a message of this isn't about taking care of you while you're downtrodden. This is about lifting you up from that.
Certainly, if you listen to him at CPAC in terms of talking about where the economy is, where unemployment is. Get to this, Ilhan Omar, the congresswoman from Minnesota, she's apologized for some anti-Semitic remarks, but she seems to continue to say things that rise the ire of people who are attuned to this. This is her later statement made at an event, Busboys and Poets, I believe, at a bookstore. I want to talk about the political influence in this country that says it's okay for people to push for allegiance to a foreign country, that referring to Israel, from the chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, which she is on, Eliot Engel. Her comments were outrageous and deeply hurtful, and I ask that she retract them, apologize, and commit to making her case on policy issues without resorting to attacks that have no place in the Foreign Affairs Committee or the House of Representatives. Robert, to you, Steve King, as you know, does not have any committee assignments anymore for comments that he made. How does Ilhan Omar?
Well, I think what Omar, if you read the full context of the statement, she's simply asking the question of why are we not allowed to even debate issues regarding our donations and our aid to Israel? Why are we not able to debate issues such as the UN finding that Israel may have committed war crimes by killing Palestinians last year?
There was a lot of debate. There's been a lot of debate about foreign aid.
Yeah, well, the point is that she wants to have a space where we can have these discussions without them being considered.
Yeah. It's got 15 seconds.
Oh, only 15 seconds?
All right, you get 20.
Because, I'm sorry, we debate this all the time. What's happening here with Ilhan Omar is she's questioning the motive.
Gives license to countries like China and Russia to then further engage with Venezuela and do it in the name of protecting Venezuela's sovereignty by drumming up the idea that the United States is going to invade the nation of Venezuela. I strategically think that it was a bad statement. With that, I yield back.
Thank you. Ms. Omar.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for your testimonies. Mr. Adams, in 1991, you pleaded guilty to 2 counts of withholding information from Congress regarding your involvement in the Iran-Contra affair, for which you were later pardoned by President George H.W. Bush. I fail to understand why members of this committee or the American people should find any testimony that you give today to be truthful.
If I can respond to that.
It wasn't a question.
That
was not a question. I reserve the right to my time.
It is not right.
That was not a question.
Committee can attack
on February 8th,
who is not permitted to reply.
That was not a question. Thank you for your participation. On February 8th, 1982, you testified before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee about U.S. policy in El Salvador. In that hearing, you dismissed as communist propaganda report about the massacre of El Mozote, in which more than 800 civilians, including children as young as 2 years old, were brutally murdered by U.S. trained troops. During that massacre, some of those troops bragged about raping a 12-year-old girl before they killed them. You later said that the U.S. policy in El Salvador was a fabulous achievement. Yes or no, do you still think so?
From the day that President Duarte was elected in a free election to this day, El Salvador has been a democracy. That's a fabulous achievement.
Yes or no, do you think that massacre was a fabulous achievement that happened under our watch?
That is a ridiculous question, and I
yes
will not
or no?
No.
I will
Chairman,
take that as a yes.
I am not going to respond to that kind of personal attack, which is not a question.
Yes or no, would you support an armed faction within Venezuela that engages in war crimes, crimes against humanity or genocide, if you believe they were serving U.S. interests, as you did in Guatemala, El Salvador, and Nicaragua?
I am not going to respond to that question. I'm sorry. I don't think...